Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Quickfreeze Versus. Today I'm going to be taking on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time for the Super Nintendo. But I'm also going to do another game. I'm going to do Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time for the new updated XBOX 360 and PS3. So I'm actually going to do both versions of that game. Now this game, or video I would say, is actually requested to me by a fellow YouTuber, DHudson531. He requested Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so I figured, why not do it? So the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time is an arcade game based on the 1987's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon show. The game itself was produced by Konami in 1991, and it was actually a sequel to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 arcade game that was on the original Nintendo. So a year later, in 1992, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Turtles in Time arcade game was actually ported to the Super Nintendo, but it was remade. It was called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 Turtles in Time. The reason they put a 4 at the end of the title is because there was already 3 games before it that were on the original Nintendo. So to go alongside those games, they actually added the 4 at the end of the title for the Super Nintendo version. But this Super Nintendo version wasn't a direct remake or a direct port of the arcade game. It was actually a new game with new features, new bosses, new stages, a lot of new stuff. And one of the new things they added was actually a new stage in the game, the Technodrome, that they plopped in halfway through the Super Nintendo version. The stages Sewer Surfing and Neon Knight Rider that were on the arcade version of the game were changed to be bonus stages for the Super Nintendo version, where a player can rank up points by defeating enemies and collecting pizzas to gain extra lives. Another thing they added or changed for the Super Nintendo version was 5 new bosses. They added in the Rat King, which was the boss of the Sewer Surfing stage for the Super Nintendo. They added in a Battle Tank Shredder, which was the boss of the new Technodrome level that they added. They also added in Rocksteady and Bebop. Those were the Warthog and Rhinoceros characters from the 1987 cartoon show. They added those in just so it has more ties to the cartoon show, I guess. And the last 2 characters, they didn't add in, but they moved around or changed. They changed Tucker and Razor from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze movie. That's what they were from. And they were actually the bosses of the pirate stages in the arcade version, but they were moved to the new Technodrome level as like sub-bosses for the Super Nintendo version. And the last and final change they made for the Super Nintendo version is at the end of the arcade game, the final boss was simply just the Shredder. But for the Super Nintendo, they actually changed him to become Super Shredder. Again, I don't know why they did this. I think they just did this to, to relate to the cartoons and the movies at the time. But Super Shredder was actually taken from the Secret of the Ooze movie. And as I mentioned before, in 2009, a new updated version of the game was actually created for the 360 and the PS3 called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time Reshelled. And this new updated version of the game came with new graphics, new sounds, and just a new feel to the game. What I mean by that is a new feel to the game. It added a lot of 3D aspects to the game, where the characters not only just moved around the stages in the arcade or Super Nintendo version, but they actually moved like far and closer. So it gave you depth. It gave you 3D. It gave you a 3D feel of the game. So the whole game was designed with that whole 3D aspect in mind. Another thing that was updated was the vocals in the game and the sound. The vocals were actually re-recorded by the voice actors of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2003 cartoon. So the voice actors from the new cartoon lended their voices to this game. So I guess, to make them match up, to mess up, for the new generation of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fans. Now, this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Reshelled is actually based on the original arcade game from Konami. It's not based on the Super Nintendo version. And what I mean by that is because the Super Nintendo version, like I had mentioned before, it had extra bosses, extra stages, and extra stuff like that. This new reshelled version, it doesn't have any of that. You know why? Because the arcade didn't have any of that. So it's a direct port, a direct remake of the original arcade game by Konami. But now that I told you a little about the arcade game, a little about the Xbox, and a little about the Super Nintendo version of the game, I'm going to tell you, again, the rules. Now, the rules are a little different from my past videos. I always allowed myself 10 continues to beat a game. Unfortunately, the Super Nintendo version of Turtles in Time will only allow you 4 continues before you get a game over. So what I'm going to do is I'm limiting myself again to 4 continues to go along with the Super Nintendo version. Now with that, the Xbox 360 version of the game, you actually have unlimited continues, but since I'm only allowed 4 continues for the Super Nintendo version, I'm only going to use 4 continues for the Xbox 360 version, just to keep it fair and keep it even. Now, each continue, I'm allowed 6 lives, because the Xbox 360 version of the game gives you 6 lives per continue. So I'm actually setting the Super Nintendo version of the game in the options menu to give me 6 lives for every continue. So those are the rules of the game. I'm only allowing myself 4 continues to beat both these games, but I'm giving myself 6 lives per continue. So those are the rules that I'm allowing myself for the Quickfreeze versus Episode 4, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So now that I said all that, let's just jump right in. I will tell you a little about the game. I will show you the game in its entirety. So let's get to it, and I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, so as soon as you turn on the game, you are introduced to a cutscene that begins much like the 1987's cartoon show, where the turtles burst out of the sewers, introducing themselves. First up, we have Donatello, Michelangelo, Raphael, and their leader, Leonardo. And with that, they slash their way right into the title screen, where we can select our game. As soon as we do, we see April O'Neil reporting live at the Statue of Liberty, until suddenly the evil Krang in his exosuit comes and snatches the Statue of Liberty away. Then all of a sudden, Shredder appears on the television set and laughs at the Ninja Turtles, challenging them to stop his evil plans, where the Turtles have no choice but to jump right into action.
Big Apple, 3 a.m.
Okay guys, this is the first stage, which is the Big Apple at 3 a.m. And I thought about how I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to show you both games at the same time, comparing the two. Now the Xbox 360 version is a direct remake of the classic arcade cabinet by Konami. So whatever I say about the Xbox version, I'll be saying about the arcade version as well. Whereas the Super Nintendo version, that's where it has all the extra stages, extra enemies, and extra bosses. So the first thing you're going to notice that is different between the two games is the combat system. The Super Nintendo version, you can only attack enemies that are in front of you or behind you, where the 360 version, you can actually attack in all 8 directions, which is really good. But it's also really bad, because you actually find yourself sometimes slashing at air. But I'll talk about the combat system a little later on, because right now we are about to fight the first stage boss, which is Baxter Stockman. Now those who don't know who Baxter Stockman is, he's the scientist that got changed into a mutated fly back in the 1987's cartoon. But in this game, he's one of the bosses, and he's actually a really easy boss. All you need to do is just kind of dodge his gunfire, wait till he comes down, and then just start slashing at him. once you knock him down to about half life, he'll switch guns to like some sort of like goo handgun that really doesn't change his strategy. Just wait till he comes down and he's easily defeated.
Alley Cat Blues.
Now each turtle has their own different fighting style, which means they bring different attributes to the game. Leonardo, he's your average all-around fighter. Michelangelo, he's the strongest fighter in the game because he has a 4-hit combo. Donatello with the longest weapon has the longest reach, and Raphael with the shortest weapon is kind of bad in fights, but he's also the fastest turtle. Now all 4 turtles have a special attack that you can do if you press attack and jump at the same time. Now at this point, this is where the two games start to differ. These little boxing robots, these were only in the Xbox 360 version and the arcade, where in the Super Nintendo version, we got these tentacle robots that first premiered in the first season of the Turtles cartoon back in the 80s. The boss of the second stage, Alley Cat Blues, is none other than Metalhead. If you guys remember Metalhead from the cartoon, he's the robotic turtle created by Krang to eliminate the Ninja Turtles. And he's actually kind of easy. What he does is jump around 3 times until he reaches one end of the screen and he shoots his machine gun, which you could easily just jump over, repeat that, and he's easily defeated.
Sewer surfing.
The stage Sewer Surfing, this is when the two versions started to differ a lot from each other. The Super Nintendo version was turned into a bonus stage where you had to destroy as many enemies as possible and collect as many pieces as possible to gain points at the end. The Xbox 360 and the arcade version was nothing more than a normal stage. At the end of the Sewer Surfing stage for the Super Nintendo, after you collected all your bonus points, you actually get to fight a boss, the Rat King. Once you defeated him, you move on to an exclusive level that was only for the Super Nintendo. On the Xbox 360 and the arcade version, at the end of Sewer Surfing, you meet Shredder, and this is when he threatens you and sends you back in time.
Technodrome. Let's kick shout.
The Technodrome is the 4th stage for the Super Nintendo. This level is actually an extra level that was not included in the Xbox or the arcade version of the game. Halfway through the stage, you meet Tokkar and Razor. These two bosses were first appeared in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze movie. Once defeated, Tokkar and Razor revert back to the normal animal form, much like they did in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 movie. The final boss of the stage is Shredder himself, but he's in a gigantic mech armor. The only way to defeat him is to fight these foot soldiers and throw them at the screen. Once Shredder is defeated, he jumps out of the mech armor and into the time warp. For the Super Nintendo, this is when you are sent back in time, whereas the arcade and 360 version, you are sent back in time in the stage Sewer Surfing.
Prehistoric Turtlesaurus.
Prehistoric Turtlesaurus, this is when the game really started to be difficult for both versions, because it introduced 2 new enemies. The first being the rock soldiers, and the second being the pink foot soldiers that block all your attacks. Combine with these 2 enemies, and you'll be lucky to make it to the end. If you make it to the end of the Xbox or the arcade version of the game, you'll fight Cement Man, and this guy is very difficult because he'll hit you and then change into a puddle, and when he's in puddle form, he is untouchable. So you must run away until he comes back into normal form. the Super Nintendo version, you'll fight Slash, the prehistoric turtle. He is also very difficult because you can only attack him from behind. But once you defeat Slash or Cement Man, then you move on to the next stage.
Skull and Crossbones.
The stage Skull and Crossbones are much like the other stages in the game, where it introduces new enemies, such as foot soldiers with explosive bombs, and rock soldiers with bazookas that do massive amounts of damage. For the Super Nintendo version of this game, the boss of this stage is Rocksteady and Bebop, which were taken right out of the cartoon show. These two are actually really easy to beat, just keep moving and you'll get them no problem. For the Xbox version of the game, you fight Taka and Razor. Now these two fight just like they did in the Technodrome for level 4 of the Super Nintendo. No matter who you face, either Taka or Razor or Rocksteady and Bebop, once defeated, you move on to the next stage.
Bury my shell at Wounded Knee.
Now you guys may already noticed, I've been using Leonardo this entire time, and this is actually a good time to bring up the character selection during the gameplay. For the Xbox 360 version, once you pick a turtle at the beginning of the game, you're stuck with that turtle until you either quit the game or beat it. For the Super Nintendo version, once you lose all your lives and use up one of the continues, then you are allowed to select another turtle. And the boss of this stage, for both versions of the game, is the Cajun alligator, Leatherhead. Now this boss can be somewhat difficult, because what he'll do, he'll run across the screen 3 times, and when he does this, he's untouchable and you will take a lot of damage if struck by him. But once he reaches the other end of the screen on the 3rd run, then you can hit him. Hit him for a short while, and then he'll do the run again. Keep the strategy up until you defeat it, and then you move on to the next stage.
Neon Knight Riders.
For the Super Nintendo, Neon Knight Rider was just like Sewer Surfing, where it was a bonus stage. But this bonus stage had similar gameplay, much like F-Zero. The Neon Knight Rider stage for the Xbox 360 was not a bonus stage, but just a normal level, where you fought endless amounts of foot soldiers until you reached the end. The boss of the Neon Knight Rider stage is none other than the first enemy that you saw at the beginning of the game, Krang inside his exosuit. Now this boss is actually fairly easy. Once you get close to him, hit him a few times and then back away. He'll either charge at you, or he'll stand back and fire random missiles at you. Keep doing this strategy over and over until he's finally defeated. Once he is defeated, Krang laughs at you and flies off.
Starbase, where no turtle has gone before.
Now, just like the stage Prehistoric Turtlesaurus, the 9th stage where no turtle has gone before, this is when the game really vamped up the difficulty to expert level. If you're playing this game solo, you will get frustrated and you'll learn to appreciate what a great co-op game this is. For the Super Nintendo, like I said before, this game is strictly 2 players. But for the Xbox 360 version, you could either have 4-player locally or 4-player online. And that's what I recommend you doing. If you're either playing the Super Nintendo or the Xbox 360 version, play with somebody. Play with a friend of yours, play online, do whatever. Because if you play this game singly, you will be frustrated because it is a very hard game to play alone. As you can see right here, I just died with Leonardo using my first continue on the Xbox 360 version. And I also used another continue for the Super Nintendo version. And for this time, I'm going to switch it up a little bit and switch to Donatello because he has a long reach. Unfortunately, I couldn't use Donatello for the Xbox version because you can't switch characters during gameplay, but Leonardo will work just fine. And the reason I say that is because I actually need a long weapon when I'm fighting this Krang. Because this Krang, what he'll do is he'll fly around the screen shooting these little plastic bubbles at you, trapping you inside. When he's about almost dead, he'll either switch it up and just start smashing the ground. If you're standing under him, you will get flattened and take a big chunk out of your life. His other attack is he'll fly around the screen dropping these little robots. And these robots are annoying and frustrating beyond belief. But like I said, with either Donatello or Leonardo, they have a long enough weapon where they can hit them from afar. But even with a long weapon, it's still not enough, because I actually had to use another continue when fighting this boss. Now this boss, like I said, is just really hard and really frustrating. What makes them frustrating is just these little robots. You want to take them out as quickly as possible. But when you do, it's still not enough, because you will die from every hit. But just keep at him and he will go down.
Technodrome, the final shell shock.
So here we are at the final stage of the game, but it's not really a stage at all, it's more like just a boss battle with Super Shredder. And Super Shredder, he's actually really powerful with all these different attacks. And one attack in particular will shrink you back down to a normal turtle, causing you to lose a life instantly. And with that, I actually have to use another continue for the Super Nintendo, so this time I thought I switched to Raphael just because he's a little quicker. But even with the faster Raphael and 6 new lives, I still couldn't actually get the pattern of Super Shredder down. And I didn't realize the pattern of Super Shredder until it was too late. The way to beat him is to wait till he attacks and either get close to him or get behind him and attack, and then step away. But unfortunately, I learned that way too late and I got a game over. So unfortunately, I was unable to beat the Super Nintendo version of Turtles in Time. Now for the Xbox 360 version, Shredder is actually really easy for 2 reasons. One being that there's 2 pizzas on each side of the stage that you can use to refill your health, and the second that he's really predictable. All you really have to do is get in, get a few hits, and back away. Rinse and repeat, and he'll go down as easy as pie. So there you have it. I was able to defeat the Xbox 360 version of the game, but not the Super Nintendo. So I considered it a draw between me and the Ninja Turtles. But with that, I only have one question though. Why did Shredder steal the Statue of Liberty in the first place?
Okay, so there you have it. There's the verdict. I was unable to beat the Super Nintendo version of Turtles in Time, but I was able to beat the Xbox 360 version. The reason being is that the Super Nintendo version is just simply harder, okay? And for a few examples on that, it's just the pink foot soldiers that like blocked all your attacks, the rock soldiers with the giant bazookas that took away half your health if you got hit by them. The game was just simply harder. And if I had to choose which version of the game I prefer, I would pick the Super Nintendo version over the Xbox 360 version any day. Simply just because it was harder, a lot more challenging, and a lot more fun. I found the Xbox 360 version
kind of dull and boring. You know, it was just, I understand that both games are basically like button mashers, but the 360 version was just simply boring to play. So I highly recommend the Super Nintendo version of the game over the Xbox 360 version of the game, and I highly recommend you play either of these games with a friend or online if you're playing the Xbox or PS3 version of the game. So play with a friend, but like I said, I would go with the Super Nintendo version of the game. So there you have it. There's episode 4 of Quickfreeze Versus. Again, as I already said, I was unable to beat the Super Nintendo version, but I did beat the Xbox 360 version of Turtles in Time. So with that, I just want to thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. And lastly, as I already said before, this video was requested to me by DHudson531. And I would really love for you guys to do the same. If you guys want me to review a game or, you know, just to play a game, see if I can beat it, please comment below, request a game. At the end of this video, I will post a list of all the superhero games that I own. So I would really appreciate you guys requesting what game I play or review next and see if I can beat it. But with that, I will again say thank you for watching. If you guys liked what you saw, please subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And that's about it. So I'm Quickfreeze from Quickfreeze's Game Room, and I'm here to bring gamers together one game at a time.